BMO survey suggests 2% interest rate hike worries 4 in 10 homeowners here in Canada. Toronto. An interest rate hike of 2% would leave 4 in 10 Canadians unsure about whether they could afford their homes, according to a new study from the Bank of Montreal. The survey, compiled for BMO by Leger Marketing and released Wednesday, found 43% believe an interest rate hike would either hamper their ability to pay or leave them on unsure footing. 1 in 5 Canadians said the survey 1 in 5 Canadians surveyed said a 2% rise would hurt their ability to make mortgage payments, while 23% said they were unsure if a rise would affect them. The report also found 50% of respondents believed they could still afford their home if interest rates spiked 2%. The survey findings come as some of Canada's biggest banks begin rising variable mortgage rates, even though the Bank of Canada's overnight interest rate remains unchanged. Many in the mortgage industry have recently advised homeowners to take on previously less popular variable mortgage rates as interest rates had remained low since the end of the recession, when the Bank of Canada pushed its overnight rate down to an emergency low of 0.25%. So those who are working in the mortgage industry were encouraging the people to take variable mortgages for their homes. And now the variable mortgage rate is on its way back up. Many in the mortgage industry have recently advised, another way to say they led. They gave information and said this is what you should do. Advised homeowners, to take on variable rate mortgages because they were telling them the interest was low upon the loan. So the mortgage industry was leading the homeowners to lock into these types of mortgages, knowing what was going to be coming in the future. The article said that a 2% interest rate hike for a mortgage would worry many homeowners. About 4 in 10 of homeowners would be worried. It would cause them concern. That's nothing, a 2% interest rate hike. What we're going to be seeing, that's nothing. We have something called the prime interest rate. Prime interest rate here in Canada. And everyone's mortgage is subject to the prime interest rate, and then after to the interest rate that you took, depending on what term or what mortgage you took with the bank. You added interest rate on top of the prime interest rate. If you had very good credit and if you were dealing with the bank for a long time, it's possible that you could have got a mortgage just locked in at the prime interest rate. However, most people get a prime interest rate plus a certain percentage. Now today they put up that certain percentage again, 0.2 and 0.5, so nearly a whole percentage point. The problem is that when Canada starts to really go into a recession or into a depression, what they're going to start to play with is the prime interest rate. The prime interest rate. And everyone who has a mortgage is going to be subject to a higher increase of the percentage on their mortgage. And it's going to be a lot more than 2%. You're looking at something that could be possibly 10 to 12% increase in your interest rate over the next year or two. That's going to be very damaging to people. And on top of that, as you saw, the article talked about the fact that the housing bubble is about to break. And I am under the impression that the value of Canadians' homes are going to drop by at least 25%. So not only will you have interest rates that are hiking and spiking, you're going to have the value of your home dropping by 25%. Because people are not going to be wanting to lock into mortgages or into getting into these interest rates in order to purchase a house. So there's going to be more on the market, and the value of the house are going to go down. And the article said that when it reached 160% household debt, that's when the economic collapse happened for the housing market. And here it says that in Canada we're over 150 already. 150% household debt. But it doesn't, it says over 150, but it doesn't tell us how over. So we could be 159.9%. We could just be sitting right there. It just seems how it's funny that all this is leading leading up to what we've been talking about and sharing all across YouTube here. Not only that, now they come up with a report on the 26th of March that says that the bank did indeed, RBC and BMO and the rest of them are raising their variable interest rates. They're raising their interest rate up. This is just the start of what's going to be going on here in Canada. A mortgage gives you a chance at a home. If you qualify for a mortgage, if your legal person has good credit, then you can qualify for a mortgage and they'll lend you the so-called debt instrument in order to, what you think is, purchase a house. And this is a debt system. And they produce a consumer note in order for you to purchase that or get that mortgage. The human, he has a right to a home. And that right to a home is always there for you. It's there for you here and it's there for you in law. Even though you may be under a mortgage and you may be stuck in the debt system for that mortgage, your human rights are still there. And it's very easily expressed. Their consumer notes are not marked properly. They're voided. The holder can be told that it's void because of the fact that they didn't fill out that consumer note properly. However, we don't understand that. But nevertheless, that operation of law is there. And as such, the human then has that right to the home. He has the right to claim that home. You don't have the right to collect on that consumer note. It's considered void according to the Bills of Exchange Act. I'm expressing that fact. When you do that, guess what? The human is expressing his right to have that home without going through all this chance and debt system and to get a mortgage. It's all there. If you understand and see what's happening in the law, you can appropriate it for yourself. The human, he has the right to the house. He has the right to housing. That's his right. The legal person pays for the right to the house through the mortgage, through those contracts. Now the consumer note that the legal person gets into contract with is not done properly. It's not valid. It can be voided. So the fact that from the beginning of that consumer note, it wasn't prescribed properly, it wasn't filled out properly, and it was void, except that you were unaware of it, your human actually had that home without the obligation to have to pay anything on that claim. But because you weren't aware, you keep paying the claimed obligation. They say, well, you have this obligation to pay for us. Pay us the debt instrument for the home. However, now that you are aware of the fact that the consumer note is not valid, then you have the right to you are exercising your right as the human being for your home. And you're just using the law to back you up. You're saying, I have the right as a human to have a home. I came to the bank as a legal person, or to whichever industry it was, as a legal person, and I acquired a service from you guys, a consumer service, to purchase a home for my legal person. I realized that I didn't have to do that. That all along, the right in law was there for me to appropriate a house. Now, I'm saying that the consumer note that we filled out is not valid. It's not proper. Therefore, there's no more obligation upon me to issue banknotes to you or issue payments to you concerning this house. So, in turn, I am actually expressing my fundamental right as a human being, because this house is mine, and I am under no obligation to pay you any more debt instruments for this house. And you knew so, you knew this, you understood this. That's why when I did fill out the consumer note with you, you didn't do it properly. You left there an operation of law for me to walk away from this obligation and keep my home, because you never did strip me of my fundamental right. You only put me into ignorance, that I wasn't aware of what was going on. March 26, 2012. RBC TD hike 5-year mortgage rates. 2 of Canada's big 5 banks have decided to raise the rate on their posted 5-year mortgages. Royal Bank and TD Bank announced Monday they were hiking their 5-year close rate by 0.20 to 5.44%. and their special fixed 4-year closed offer by 0.5% to 3.49%. Their posted 5-year variable rate, which rises or falls along with the bank's prime lending rate, will rise 10 basis points to prime plus 0.20 percentage points. So, listen to what it's saying here. The posted 5-year variable rate, which rises or falls along with the bank's prime lending rate. The Bank of Canada has repeatedly raised its concerns about household debt. The ratio of debt to personal disposable income is now above 150%. Above. They don't tell you how much, they just state above. And some economists predict it is likely to reach by late next year the 160% peak experienced in the US and the UK before their real estate corrections occurred. Ontario Budget 2012. Slay $15 billion deficit in 5 years. Ontario has essentially become a have-not province, and the 2012 provincial budget introduced Tuesday is designed with that fiscal reality in mind. As it is, Ontario's minority Liberal government is proposing a freeze on both public sector wages and corporate tax cuts to help the province dig out from underneath its weighty $15.3 billion deficit. Noteworthy for the consumers, and according to the Canadian Press, Ontario will freeze welfare and delay increases to the Ontario Child Benefit, increase driver's license fees, expand gambling and sell off government buildings and the Ontario Northland Rail Service, I wonder to who, close 7 tourism centres, delay high-occupancy vehicle lane projects designed to unclog traffic jams in densely populated cities, amalgamate school boards in areas of low populations and consolidate the so-called underutilized schools by reducing funds to keep them afloat, cut $34.3 million funding for student transportation, shave $30 million from the public drug plan by having seniors with income over $100,000 and couples with a combined income of $160,000 pay higher deductibles, that's not so bad, and reduce health care spending to 2.1% annually. Reduce health care spending.